Straw Hut Media.
Hi, movie lovers. I'm Mark J. Parker, a filmmaker, podcaster, and a content creator, and this is Release Date Rewind, a show that celebrates movie anniversaries. I love movies, and I bet you do too if you're listening to this podcast on the Straw Hut Media Network or watching it on YouTube. I focus on movies that are hitting a milestone anniversary each month, and this is a very special episode because we're not talking about just one or two movies. No. We are talking about three famous comedies from 30 years ago. It's a Jim Carrey triple feature and a look back at his historic year. In 1994, he starred in Ace Ventura in February, The Mask in July, and Dumb and Dumber in December. 3 number one hits in 11 months, and he was the first actor to do that. We'll discuss each one in chronological order, so spoilers are coming up, people. If you need to watch or rewatch these movies, unfortunately, right now, none of them seem to be streaming anywhere in the US with a subscription, but you can always rent them, or find them online somewhere, or borrow from your library like I did. All right, pet detectives, bank robbers, and limo drivers, your mission starts now, because it's time to rewind. Let's move on to The Mask. I love The Mask so much, Katie. I knew I did, and rewatching it, I love this movie. I know it's so good. It's a little kid focused. It's definitely
the most kid friendly out of all of them.
I agree, but it works so well.
It's the most kid friendly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So you think you saw this one in theaters?
I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it with like Ben and Becky Reed. I want to say like flashback, right? Yeah, throwback. Yeah. So I want to say we saw it because I just remember, and then watching it at their house all the time. They had it on videotape, and we would watch it a lot, But I hadn't seen it probably in like 25 years. Like I hadn't rewatched. I mean, it had been a long time, so I was excited to rewatch it because I knew I was going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I remembered
so
a lot
much
of it.
Fun.
It's so ingrained in my brain.
Same.
I still remembered a shit ton of it.
I am right there with you. I hadn't watched the full thing in many decades, but I remembered it so well. And I think it has great music, like good, like mystery, mystical kind of score. It looks beautiful. I kind of forgot that it really is a great comic book movie, and it is adapted from a comic book.
I went in kind of a mini deep dive on the comic because I never knew that. So at the credits, the end credits, it's based on the Dark Horse. And I was familiar with Dark Horse because I do dabble in graphic novels and comics.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, I've got it. And then come to find out, the comic book is very dark. And now in the universe, I want like HBO or Netflix to do a series based on the dark version. Where 30 years have passed, I feel like we should do, because it looks really cool. I didn't read the comics, or I didn't read them. I didn't want to spend. There's a lot of issues out there. I'm like, I don't have like hundreds of dollars.
Oh my god, can you? Yeah,
I know, but I wanted to. So I was looking at the covers and I was reading. So in the comic book, so Dark Horse Comics has a lot of great comics out, or a lot of great graphic novels and comics. One is Buffy. Yeah. They do have Buffy.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, they have Umbrella Academy. Love that show on Netflix, everybody. Star Wars, Sin City. Love Sin City. It's one of my faves. I actually have a poster of it up in my TV room. Hellboy, also love, and 300. So they have a lot of big main titles. But yeah, in the comic, he's called the Big Head Killer, and it is a mask of Loki. And Stanley Ipkiss is actually like vengeful and like not a good guy in comics. So the mask does bring out your innermost desires, and Stanley is to get vengeance on people that have wronged him and stuff. So he fucking kills people. He just goes kill in brutal cartoonish ways. Like it's crazy. I was reading on some of the deaths. I'm like, holy shit. So he's like decapitating people brutally. Like it's bad. So I mean, it's great, but it's bad. But yeah, so he actually, it's like a horror story more so.
Oh my gosh, I'm right there with you. I want to see the dark version.
He's like, oh my god, this could be a really like cool, dark, like Netflix or Amazon, whoever wants to pick it up. It would be really cool to do this as the horror series. Yeah. And so he dons the mask and kills a bunch of people, but he's like cartoonish. So it is cartoonish, but it's like with actual death. So in the movie, it's cartoonish and there's like people getting beat up and ridiculous antics, but no one actually really dies. And then he's actually killed his girlfriend. There's a girlfriend in the comic. Milo the dog replaces the girlfriend in the movie, so he doesn't have. Yeah, so they have a dog in the set, which I'm like, okay. She dons the mask and kills Stanley, and then she dons the mask and kills. It's crazy. I'm like, I went into it like a dive. I was like, I want to read these books, and I want this to be a series. So like, let's put it out there. But yeah, so I just found
that's
it really
amazing.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Oh my gosh, good detective skills, detective.
Because I had to know, like, Dark Horse. Ooh, let me look it up, and I'm like, oh, and like look at the covers. The covers are creepy because he's like, so he has the big teeth. He's got the green mask, but it's like evil looking. Like it just, it's really. I'm like,
and even though the movie is, very fun and it's obviously such a comedy and it's very light.
Yeah, very silly fun.
There are moments every now and then, that are a little creepy, or especially when later on Dorian kind of becomes
Dorian dons the
evil,
mask,
but there's a little bit of darkness. It's still very fun, but there once in a while you see that come across the screen. Even how Jim Carrey as the mask, when he's like really staring at Cameron Diaz, it's a little creepy.
It's creepy. That scene is creepy with them on the bench. I'm like, okay, calm down. But that's
he's like
a little rapey.
I agree. I wrote down, I'm like, okay, this part hasn't really aged well. Let her go.
Exactly. So but yeah, so we kind of just jumped, but I was like really interested, and I'm like, I would like to see it into a series, because now I'm like,
I love that.
Maybe
idea.
An investor. Let's give money. I'll give $5 to this show to be made. Come on, everybody. Let's do a GoFundMe. Let's get it made.
I'll double her 5 and I'll give 10. And that's always so fun to just see how adaptations end up being so different. And especially with Jim Carrey, who had already now, because of Ace Ventura, started to become a household name and all ages like him. Of course, you want to soften the source material to be for all ages, right? It makes a lot of sense.
This is the story of Stanley Ipkiss.
Stanley, you are the nicest guy. Really, you are.
Yeah. His job is at the bank.
You're 40 minutes late. Now, that's the same as stealing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dickey. It'll never happen again.
He loves his dog.
Come on, give him to me. Drop it.
He's polite to his landlord.
Ipkiss, do you have any idea what time it is?
You know, Mrs. Penman?
What? Nothing.
And the most exciting thing in his life are his pajamas.
The Mask, everybody, came out July 29th, 1994, summertime. So I guess we were going to be in second grade. Oh my God, we were little. We were totally little, but we thought we were like so cool and so tough. So on the news side, we were very cool. You're right. On the news side, this is what was going on, everybody, in late July 94. Going back to Tonya Harding. So that guy, Jeff Gillooly, you know how just a few months ago he implicated his ex-wife, Tonya Harding? Well, now Jeff Gillooly was sentenced to 2 years in prison for the attack. So you know how these court cases and trials take forever. He finally got his sentencing. And so then all eyes were on Tonya Harding to see what was going to happen to her. So that's that. The number one song was I Swear by All For One. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
I swear. So that was the number one song. And not the number one song yet, but it's so funny because the Jim Carrey connection, Kiss from a Rose from Seal, had just been released as a single.
I was wondering.
Isn't that so wild?
I was wondering if that was out yet, because I was like, number one would have been... Yeah, okay.
Because they used that for Batman Forever a whole year later. But it's funny because I do remember, I have a memory of that song being out for a while, and then they like made a new music video for it for Batman. So but it was such a big thing.
Which they kind of did here and there. I feel like they would have like a different like movie,
the movie music video version, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right,
yeah. So that had just come out, which we know that ended up being a huge song, Kiss from a Rose, right? Popular movies that came out around this time, Forrest Gump, huge, right?
I know another big one. I'm like, oh my God,
another big one.
Phenomenal soundtrack. Oh, that's
massive movie, such a big deal. And some of those movies that Katie was just mentioning a little bit ago, True Lies, iconic. James Cameron. The Client, one of my faves. I love a good legal thriller. Oh my gosh, I love The Client.
One. I haven't seen that in a long time. That's due for a rewatch.
We'll see. No promises, but the True Lies and The Client, they're on my list.
I'm your James Cameron girl.
Yes, so I will be hitting you up
love
if I
True
can.
Lies.
So yeah, keep those in mind. Also, The Lion King, that had just come out in June. One of the biggest Disney movies ever. So that was obviously a big deal. And another movie you're coming back to talk to me about, Speed. Speed had just come out a month earlier.
I texted you about that. I was like, beep, beep, pop. I rewatched it recently. I'm like, Mark, you need to do Speed. I forgot this came out in 94. My brother Gavin and I are watching it. But yeah, if we do, we'll talk about the rewatch with my brother. We're cracking up. My brother is basically out plot holes, and I was like, "Damn it, Gavin, stop ruining movies."
Oh, good. I haven't watched that in years, so I'll definitely rewatch. And then we'll talk about it because, when you told me you were watching, I was like, oh, how funny, because that's on my list. Save the date. You're going to be on. So this part of the episode is basically just a preview for what's to come later this year on Release Date Rewind. So all those movies were huge. Of course, they were in the top 10. The Mask came out, and of course, that was number 1. That came out the same day as 2 other movies, Black Beauty. Didn't really see that one, but I know that had a little bit of a thing.
It's a horse movie.
Yeah, horse movie, a little slow, whatever. I think that they made that because of the success a year or 2 prior with The Secret Garden. Disney did that, which I did like the Secret Garden.
Very
They're like that,
okay.
and I think it was the same, people that worked on it. So Black Beauty and another Nicolas Cage movie, going back to Nick Cage, who we talked about in Peggy Sue, It Could Happen to You. He starred in that with Bridget Fonda.
That's
Remember
a cute
one?
movie. I really like that.
And I think Rosie Perez was in that one as well.
Because he played, she's his wife.
Yeah.
And Bridget Fonda's the waitress. That's a really cute little romantic.
Super cute.
I
remember.
I like that one.
That was on HBO like a lot. I feel like I watched that on HBO.
Yeah, that's where I saw it like a few times. Yeah.
Right.
Always HBO.
Yeah. So that came out the same day as The Mask. And here comes such a fun ride of a movie. Katie, in your own words, I'm going to throw it back over to you. What's your brief little, summary of The Mask? What happens?
So in The Mask, which I kind of touched on when I was talking about the comic book, it is about a kind of down on his luck, hopeless romantic, Stanley Ipkiss, which I always remember his name because it is such like a schwa name.
It's such a great name. Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's like the worst name ever.
It is, and it's like the name of someone that's always down on his luck. So, so he's not having a lot of luck with the romance, the ladies. The job sucks. He's his boss is a dick. Yeah. Landlord's a bitch. So another landlord theme.
She is great.
But he's a good guy at heart. He's got an amazing dog named Milo. So one day he sees what he thinks is a person in the river. Like a body, and he's like, "Ooh, I'll get you." So he comes down and he jumps in, rescues, quote unquote, ends up being like a pile of garbage with this mysterious mask. And he's like, "Oh, interesting." So it is cool looking. So he takes it home. He's watching cartoons, which I wrote in my notes. A grown man watching VHS of cartoons. Okay. We love you, Stanley.
Zaher. No.
Sorry, anyone that watches. But I just thought that was funny. I did make a note like, okay, grown man watching cartoons on VHS.
And how the landlord even says, turn off those cartoons. They're too loud. She's used to it. Yeah.
So he comes to find out when he puts the mask on, it gives him superpowers in a sense. And the mask essentially brings out your innermost desires, and it creates, you become like a superhuman. You can do anything your imagination allows. And so he becomes this like romantic, suave, slick,
but also
cartoon
chaotic
character, but also very chaotic, unpredictable, a little scary at times. So hilarious hijinks ensue. That's going to be my theme for every description.
Seriously.
So in the movie, he does not go on a killing rampage like in the comic book. He just goes on a hilarious rampage where he just, makes fun of people and, makes fool of people.
Totally.
That's the Mask. Yep.
Love it. Excellent. Well done. And, what do you think at the end? I know we're jumping around, but, everyone knows to expect spoilers. At the very end of the movie, when he flushes Dorian into the little indoor, pond, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Do you think Dorian died, or did Dorian go to some weird, alternate reality?
I don't know. I was wondering
Right?
that exact same thing when I was watching, because there was a few deaths in the movie. It's not completely death free.
Right, that's true.
Dorian
there's a
kills
couple.
the main mobster, and then
Yes.
Dorian's friend dies. He gets shot during the bank robbery. So
Yep,
there is
which
a
I
few
love.
deaths.
I love when his friend is dying. Dorian still gives him a cigarette. He's like, "Here,
It is
take
a
this."
kind of sad scene because it's like the music's going along and they're
Yep.
having that amazing dance, which we're going to talk about the dance routine. It's one of my favorite
yes.
scenes. And like his friend, the cigarette just drops, and it's like, I was like, that's actually a good scene. I'm like, oh, that's because the juxtaposition of like happy, like manic dancing, having a great time, and then the sad, like my friend just died in my arms, essentially. Even though they're all bad people, but you could still see there was a friendship there.
Oh yeah, I agree. That was heavy. It's definitely it has heavy. A moment there.
So there are deaths, but yeah, does Dorian die? I don't know. I was wondering that too. It's kind of like Willy Wonka when he goes up the chocolate chute and like, does the kid drown?
You're right.
That kid ain't walking out of that. Like Dorian's not walking.
That's a great connection. That's a really good comparison. Yeah. We'll be right back.
But now...
Hey, you! What are you doing down there? I'm just looking for my mask!
All that is about to change. Because Stanley Ipkiss is not the man he used to be. Smokin'!
What's cool about this movie is there are a few bad people. Like even Cameron Diaz as Tina, who, I mean, oh my God, absolute stunner. I mean, Cameron Diaz in this,
love that.
Any
I
movie.
forgot introducing Cameron. I forgot it was her first movie.
I know, this is her first movie.
I love that.
You know what's so wild? Yeah, introducing Cameron Diaz.
It's so exciting. Like, I know her.
What a major movie to be. I mean, wow. And the camera loves her. We are looking at like lips and cleavage and everything. I mean, but she's absolutely stunning. And also, obviously, we came to realize in later movies, there's something about Mary, Charlie's Angels. She is also such a comedic force.
Very funny.
So
not the best actress, but she's got charisma, comedy.
Yeah, I think she's pretty good. Yeah, I feel like very rarely was there a stumble. Yeah. Yeah. When she was good, she was good, Yeah,
I agree completely.
What's crazy is at the end credits, they have like a featuring, which are all like the leads. She's the last person listed, I guess, because she was new and like her agent just,
brand new.
Like all these other people. It's like Jim Carrey, then all these people, and then Cameron Diaz. And then it has like a sub list of like all the like, supporting, smaller roles. But I was like, Cameron Diaz is definitely number 2. Come on, everyone,
Yeah.
But it's just funny to see, when when a megastar already feels like a megastar, but introducing and like last of the list,
But she's not. And they didn't want her for that film.
Who did they want?
Who's the director? Chuck
Russell. The director is Chuck Russell.
He fought for her to be in the film to the point that he threatened not to do the film.
Wow.
So they didn't want her because she was so new. So she was discovered coming out of like a modeling agency. So they kind of were like, oh, we think you'd be good for the role. They actually wanted, I believe, Anna Nicole Smith to play her as one option.
Oh, I can see that. Yep.
And then honestly, there was a ton of other people for Tina. So this is a list of people that they considered for the role. Ready? Okay. Christina Applegate, Jennifer Connelly, Laura Dern, Alyssa Milano, Gwyneth Paltrow, Robin Wright, Winona Ryder, Alicia Silverstone, Uma Thurman, Christy Swanson, and there was like other ones too. So
a lot of them make perfect sense. Like
a lot of it's agreed. Yeah.
Uma, Christy Swanson had just done Buffy. I mean, like a lot of those names. Now, Gwyneth, that was interesting because Gwyneth was kind of new. Like
she had, I'm trying. Yeah,
she had like a small role in Hook and like a couple things, but like she to me wasn't like as big of a name as others,
Paltrow though, but she is in with her mom and dad were
her parents. Yep.
And maybe her getting in, but Cameron Diaz had to audition like 12 times for the part, and she only landed the role 7 days before shooting. So they were because she was so new. She was so new that they were like, we don't want. I don't know. This is a risk. So talk about down to the wire. Yeah,
giving her a round of applause. That's amazing. Can you imagine getting booked on a major Jim Carrey movie a week before? I mean, that's kind of honestly, that's pretty shitty. Like, come on now. Luckily, it's not like she had a ton of lines to memorize. It's all doable. But like, and obviously, it was a hit, and we love it. So in a role like that, I mean, sure, a bigger name at the time would have been great, but the movie's all about Jim Carrey. He's playing two different characters. So whatever, right?
It's a power tug. It's supposed to make you feel powerful.
Does it work?
Now, how about that account, huh?
Yeah, no, I love that the movie does sort of embrace how even Tina is kind of bad. She's with Dorian. She's got that amazing, very Gale Weathers camera purse, you know, on the vault.
Giant
right? I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But you know, she's a little crooked. And then even Amy Yazbek, who I love, as
I love
Peggy.
that twist too.
Yes.
And I remember being a kid. And I remember we're kind of skipping to the end, but when she's like, "Yeah, you're such a nice guy," blah blah blah, and he's like, "Do you really mean that?" She goes, "Actually, no." And I always remember that line because I remember being like, "Wait, what? She's not." Because when we were kids, it's very good girl, bad girl, good guy, bad guy, like very black and white. And this movie was like, nope, Tina's the good one. She's probably actually more of a victim, and we can get into that.
Yes.
And Amy Gasp is the bad one, is the crooked one. Yes,
right? And you know, and still I kind of. Yeah, and still I sort of feel for Peggy because she even says, like, I just can't lose my condo. And she's said earlier, like, the pay is not good as a reporter, and she takes the story from her coworker because she really needs the money. So actually, like, even though it's a comic book movie, would you call this a superhero movie?
So that's a really good question.
Is he a superhero?
It's funny because he does say in the movie, like, I could be a superhero with my powers. Right. He does say that. Maybe a little bit of an anti-hero movie because he's not
anti-superhero.
He still does things for himself, like he steals all the money and like so. You know, he puts it in the closet. That's a great scene too. And and Milo's like, "Bartley's like, stop it, Milo!" And he's like, trying to get the money. That's a funny scene. And totally ad-libbed, by the way. Like that's all ad-libbed. That whole thing with Milo. Yeah. So just a lot of ad-libbing, but yeah, so I guess you could kind of call it a superhero or maybe a little bit of an anti-hero movie. Yeah. In the comic book, no, he's not a superhero.
Right.
No,
wow.
but
said. Yeah. Yeah, because I was wondering as I was watching it, I'm like, yeah, would this be considered a superhero movie? Because it has, honestly, all the right like beats. I mean, it's not that different than like Spider-Man, you know, finding this thing or something happening and now having this secret, you know, so
because he's so mischievous and Loki is the powers behind the mask is apparently Loki, but because
I know, is that fun? The whole like little Marvel story connection.
I would love to like Tom Hiddleston could be like, oh, haha, there's my mask. Right? I wondered why I left that. That would be amazing. But anyway. Like if only we could go back in time. But yeah, no, I think because it is Loki and he's got a mischief, like I wouldn't say superhero because if you think like when he's the mask, he's more like making fools of people. So like the guys that screwed him over at the car place.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, so he's like in the comic book. He really murdered them brutally.
I never really noticed it until this watch. Does he stick poles up their butts?
Sure does.
Because I know the one
it's like even worse in the comics. It's like that, and it's like it like blows up their heads. Like it is brutal.
Wow.
But yeah. So and then he like steals the money. He romances the girl. So I wouldn't say superhero. The only thing he really does heroic is stop Dorian. So towards the end, so I would say anti-hero more so because I don't really think he's doing things like I'm going to save people, like I'm going to save this bus of orphans, like you know.
Right? Yeah, he's not really saving anyone but himself, you know, and Tina and Milo,
he's
but like that's
it. Yeah. So that would be my thought on that. That's a good question, though.
I want him here tomorrow, alive. Now you have to ask yourself one question: do I feel lucky? Do ya, punks?
Almost everyone has like a dark side. Everyone's doing something bad at one point or another because they need to or because they got roped into something. Even Dorian having to report to what's his like boss's name?
I don't remember the boss's name. Yeah,
he is so interesting, and for years I've quoted saying my new 9-iron. With the golf club. What is
that line? That's so random.
It's so random, but it's stuck in my brain. Let me just say the full line. Hold on, everybody. Oh, Nico. His name's Nico with the golf club on, and they put the thing in Dorian's mouth.
That's a real scene too, and they put Peter Green like that. He's like that was real. So his reaction is actually real. Like they don't actually hit him, but They
I hope
actually
that
had a
blood
golfer.
wasn't real.
I know,
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
But that's a good
Jeez, that's
scene,
hardcore.
and that's like menacing too. I wrote in here
Yes.
like good bad guy, menacing bad guy. Peter
Yes.
Green's a really great bad guy. He's always a bad guy in things, and he's so good at it.
He's just got that face, you know?
He's just got a bad guy face. Yep, exactly. So that whole scene, I was like, wow, this is like, okay, a little dark.
Very. Yeah, I found the line. He says, I'll use your empty little skull to break in my new 9-iron.
9-iron.
We mentioned Chuck Russell. I think in this film, he's credited as Charles Russell. It's funny because as we're talking about the dark source material and the hints of darkness here and there, before this, he was a horror movie director. His first movie that he directed, which is pretty impressive to be your directorial debut as a feature film, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Yes, I saw that. Dream Warriors.
Iconic. What a good sequel. One of the best out there. And then he went on to direct the remake of The Blob, which many argue is better than the original, and it's so memorable. It's so wild.
It's a great one.
It's a good one, from the 80s, right?
Really
so
good remake.
he directed those two, and then a few years later in the 90s, he does The Mask. So, yeah, I mean, and The Mask, I have to say the effects, the visual effects, which did get an Oscar nom. This is an Oscar nominated film.
They lost to Forrest Gump, though, to one.
I know. Yeah. But, like, what do you make of the visual effects? I feel like they actually... Again, we're kind of looking at this, with nostalgia, but I feel like they were pretty great, like for 30 years ago, right?
For 30 years ago, I agree. And some of the cartoonish effects kind of worked because it was meant to be cartoonish. Like when he turns into the dog head, like
totally,
that whole thing. It kind of because it's supposed to look cartoonish, so it worked.
Yeah.
And actually, because of Jim Carrey's physicality and how he moves and everything. He actually saved them money on special effects because they didn't have to enhance his body digitally because he's so so they say he saved them money. He's a good deal.
Wow, that's amazing. I believe it. Yeah, I could totally see them being like, actually, we're good. We don't need to pay for that.
Yeah, because he was able to.
Wow, he really is like Gumby. It's amazing. Like
Gumby,
his body, right? And I have to say, I don't know. I hope I'm not the only one, but I think Jim Carrey's pretty attractive in The Mask. Do you? Do you see it?
Wait, as The Mask or?
Oh no, not as The Mask, but in The Mask, as Stanley. I don't know, it's his hair and
he's a little cutie. He's a little
he's
cutie
quite
guy.
cute.
Oh, that's my friend Stanley. He's having a rough time right now, but he's totally cute. He's a friend.
Totally.
I would totally hook him up with a friend of mine. Like, oh, I have the best girl for you.
Would you hook up with him or no?
I don't know. No. Maybe, I don't know.
maybe if it helped with
Milo
the bank
was
account.
Pretty great. I do like his dog.
I know. Milo is the sweetest. Oh my God. But I wrote in my notes, this film is kind of like equal parts Roger Rabbit, Beetlejuice, and Drop Dead Fred.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
As I was watching, I kept thinking of those movies, and you can see a little bit of their influence on this. And of course, this is very original and stands on its own. But there's just, Roger Rabbit when he's hopping around the hall and Mrs. Bean.
All the cartoon stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Roger
and then
Rabbit,
Beetlejuice when he's in that alley with the gang, and he's he has, I think, the bazooka or whatever, but he has the balloons. Oh, and I've never noticed this. Did you notice this time he pulls out a condom and he's like, he's like, oh, wrong pocket.
And when I was rewatching, I was like, oh shit, there's that. So this is the most kid directed movie, but there still is those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't remember that as a kid. That went over my head, I'm sure.
I was like, okay, that was a bold move for a pretty family friendly movie because it's not in the wrapper. I don't know if it's
it's used.
So I'm like, whoa, but anyway, that whole little moment really reminded me of Beetlejuice kind of toying with people, and then Drop Dead Fred because just his crazy energy as the Mask is so I kind of put that down.
It's like it brings your innermost desires to life. You become some sort of love-crazy wild man.
You mentioned the great dance numbers. I'm actually shocked this hasn't become a stage musical yet. Do you know what I mean? I feel like this needs to be
it's
a live musical.
It's a very musical movie. Yeah.
Definitely.
No, I love, of course, I love the two big dance numbers, Hey Pachuco and the Cuban Pete. And it's funny, Cuban Pete montage, where he stands with the cops. Right. It's most people's favorite scene. Actually, they wanted to cut that. The producers thought it was like too long. They thought it was like too long, not funny. Let's cut it. But then they did a test audience and the audience like loved it. And they're like, all right, I guess we're keeping that. Great move because it's a great scene. So that's one of my favorite scenes.
I love that scene. It is so, it makes me laugh out loud. Cuban Pete, and then I love the female cop. He's in Havana.
So did you know she's the director of The Proposal? She directed
Proposal,
the Ryan Reynolds movie.
What's her name?
Yeah,
The Proposal.
And she does a lot of choreography. She actually did choreography for She's All That.
Okay, Anne Fletcher. Yep, I'm pretty sure that's Anne Fletcher. That's amazing.
Yep. So that's
I didn't realize
her.
that was
She's
her.
the female cop. That's like,
oh,
it's like her first role ever.
That's
Isn't that
amazing.
fun?
I did not realize that's her. Yeah, she's done a ton of work. She's done a lot of choreography with Adam Shankman. Yeah, She's All That. So many things. Even I noticed on her IMDb just then, even Scream 2, she did the choreography of the movement on stage when they're doing the rehearsal of the play at college.
Okay. Because I was looking through her filmography and I was like, some of these dudes are like, were they dancing in this movie?
I know, right?
Yeah. She's a ton of
wow.
movies.
Yeah, I'm so glad they kept that in. Cuban Pete is iconic. And that especially, I was like, this needs to be a stage musical right now. Like, it's totally already so bright and colorful and musical and absolutely. And Hey Pachuco, I mean, that song is just so iconic with this movie.
It's so good. And then they did a lot of their own dancing, Cameron Diaz and Jim Carrey. Wow. Like most of it was them, which is great. And then some, I think the flips and stuff was professionals, but what a great like entrance for the mask, because that's like his his first big, like he's in it before, but like his first big reveal to Tina and to the world, and it is funny because she's like dancing and he's like and I'm like, can you imagine? Like I remember watching,
I'd be
I was like
terrified.
There's a green guy looking at me with big teeth. I'd be like, well, this is a great dance, but I'm fucking terrified. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. Like,
did you hear? Speaking of the teeth. Speaking of the teeth, I heard that because they're big, and I never really noticed that. Like, they're like big, like chiclets. I guess they were expecting for him to lip sync lines,
and he was
but he was able to just figure out how to talk with them in. And to this day, I've never noticed any issue. I would have never thought he had any problem with them in. He's such a pro.
No.
Right?
He's such a pro. Yeah, he was meant to be like silent scenes with but the teeth, he's figured out how to talk with them. I'm like, you go, Jim Carrey.
Amazing. Oh my God. But yeah, the dancing, because that is also juxtaposed. We're going back and forth between the great dancing, and I think that's when Dorian's friend dies, right?
Because he has just foiled that bank robbery that his friends his cohorts were doing. So that whole thing happened. He shows up, he like the Tasmanian devil, he shows up, takes the money, and was like, all right, and then like leaves.
And then the cops come, and there's the shootout. Yeah, because the long-haired guy who kind of creeps me out, the one,
he's a creeper.
He's like
creepy in other movies too.
Yeah. I know, I've seen him somewhere. I couldn't remember.
Right there. It's like
the guy right there. They're looking at the cameras, right? Oh yeah, because that's also when Dorian and his whole mob of thugs starts like shooting up the place, because that's when I have the line, tell Tiny Tim I won't be coming home this Christmas, which is so good. So good, and then he gets the Oscar win and all that. But that's when they're trying to get him, and they're realizing like, oh, this guy's like a maniac, and he's like,
he has powers, like this isn't, we're gonna fail at this, and then he escapes
and then the cops come, and I wrote down, because I thought this was such an odd line, Dorian says to the cops, and I love the two cops, the lieutenant and then Doyle. I love how he always says Doyle. I would want to play that role. I love that role.
Doyle.
But no, Dorian says, easy, Junior, you're giving me a Woody here, when he's being frisked. I'm like, oh, wow, okay.
Again, one of those lines that would have probably was right over my head.
We miss, but as an adult, you're like, okay. And also it's like, okay, so you're admitting that this guy's turning you on. Okay, interesting. I feel like a guy like you would probably just keep that to yourself or something, but okay, cool. I just thought that was an interesting line to add in there. Yeah, all the club stuff. What is it? Club Bongo?
So Coco Bongo, and that's actually a famous nightclub in Cancun. And I've never been. It's very schmaltzy. So I was in Cancun in November. I've been many times, and I always pass it, and I've never been in it. It is very like it has like all like it has big statues of different Hollywood stuff like Spider-Man and like if you look up a picture of it, it's very like kitschy, like it's touristy kitschy. It'd probably be a really fun time. So what I didn't look into was that I would think that came from the movie Coco Bongo, or was Coco Bongo first and then the movie took it from, I don't know which came first, The Mask or Coco Bongo in Cancun. But either way, it's actually I just passed it in November. I'm like, oh yeah, Coco Bongo. And I always think of The Mask. I'm always like,
that's so funny.
The Mask is in there, like dancing.
Oh my gosh. Well, sometime we'll have to go. I love that you've been multiple times. I still have never been once. So I'll go, and hopefully there's like a Mask, at least picture or something in there, right? I would think if they have, this other kishy stuff, they got to have the Mask.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah. So I would be interested what it looks like inside, but yeah.
That's so funny. Interesting. Okay. Cancun. Yeah. That's all super like fun. I love, even earlier on when I was about to call him Ace. No, Stanley can't get in with his friend and the girls, and then gets the water sprayed all over him and refuses to admit to Tina, that is not the loner, that's not his car, right? Yeah. You drive in a Porsche. It's like,
I know.
And she knows. She's like, okay,
honey, all right, bye.
Right. So even the outside stuff, but then all the inside, it's a cool set. It's a cool setting for this story, and it's also fun because it's just so opposite of his life. It's fun to see. By day, he's in this very like brown, very drab bank, and then he gets to go to this cool neon, place so often, I think it's such a fun, like the set, it's one of those movies where it's like, God, I wish there was like a ride, or you could go on like a studio tour, and there'd be like, right? Wouldn't that be so like fun?
That. Yeah.
Right? Going around town in Edge City.
Jim Carrey is...
That's the guy. Hello.
The Mask.
So we talk about like how much we love Jim Carrey in this role. And this is another one that I had a lot of other actors considered for the role.
Oh, wow.
So
tell me.
Rick Moranis again was considered.
How funny. Okay.
He's so hot right now.
I guess so.
Matthew Broderick, Steve Martin Short. Listen to this. Keanu Reeves.
No. Come on.
Right. I can see it maybe as Stanley Ipkiss, but not as the Mask. Mike Myers, which I could totally see Mike Myers.
Oh, yeah.
Very similar brand of humor. Nicolas Cage, which I actually could see too, because he's
he's wacky.
He's wacky. John Ritter, which I love John Ritter.
Okay. He's a little older. Yeah.
A 94. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like he was already playing like dads, and all that. Yeah.
And our love, Robin Williams, which.
Oh. Duh. Yeah. Of course.
And actually, Will Ferrell was offered the role, but he turned it down.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait,
so
really,
I know. I read that and I was like, "Well, okay."
Why would he have turned it down?
SNL? I don't know. Yeah. So again, take it with a grain of salt, everybody. Like I get this trivia from IMDb sometimes.
That'd be really interesting if true, because that was before he joined SNL, I believe, or maybe he was on and he was brand new. I know, like
mid '90s he joined, so it was right.
And because like late 90s, he was, because 99 at the end of this year is the 25th anniversary of Superstar, which of course he was in with Molly Shannon.
And he was already famous by then. So this was only a few years prior. So I don't know.
Right.
So
and he had just done, let's see. Yeah. A Night at the Roxbury was just turned 25. So that was 98. So yeah, he wasn't famous yet, but he might have just started SNL or was about to. Wow. I would be shocked if they wanted someone like Winona Ryder, who was the it girl of 94, and then give it to Will Ferrell, who was not. That would really be surprising. But okay. It would
be interesting. Yeah. So I read that and I was like, okay.
That's an interesting list. A lot of them I see. Keanu, I would never in a million years.
No, I read that. I was like, what? But it's because he was hot then. He had just
he was Speed, he was, and even Bill and Ted, which was comedy, but not this kind of comedy, right?
I think came out.
But I could see I could see him as Dorian. But
possibly,
even Peter Green does it so well. Like he's just such a intimidating
for Dorian, and these actually you can see a lot of these. So Jack Nicholson was considered for Dorian.
Wow.
Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Who plays a great bad guy. Dennis Hopper.
I see that.
Robert De Niro. Well, yeah. I mean,
wow.
And Rupert Everett. I was like, Rupert Everett. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's so weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So some good choices. I mean,
It just also is so fun to think back at this time at like who was popular enough to be on the list.
That's
like
what I'm thinking,
Robert De Niro and Rupert Everett on the same list. Interesting,
Interesting, right?
Yeah. But again, I think this cast is solid. I would not change anyone. And like we said, even Amy Yazbek, I forget his friend's name, but I love his friend. He's such a good kind of like, a little bit of like a little douche, but he's just like this fun kind of wisecracking sidekick,
Fun, wisecracking, a little douchey. That's like perfectly described. Yeah. He usually plays like characters like that. Yeah.
Right. He's so fun. Like to me, he kind of also like has the vibe of like a preteen. Like you could just see that actor and you know what he looked like at like 12 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Hold the phone. Killer at 3:00.
Somebody stop me!
I wrote down one of the best lines. That's a spicy meatball.
Mark, I literally have that written down. And it's something I still say to this day. If it's something spicy, that's a spicy meatball. Like
it's probably between that and Smokin'. I mean, those two are the biggest lines of the movie, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of like Smokin' was ad-libbed, a lot from I think
was it really?
I wrote it down, but a lot of the lines from The Mask were ad-libbed.
Wow, because he says it so much, and then I forgot that at the very end, once everything, Dorian's gone, everything's back to normal, and he's got Tina, and they're on the bridge, and I love that Tina's the one that throws the mask over the water, which I just think is nice, because like that's the biggest sign of her saying like, no, I like you just the way you are, right? Yeah. And then when they kiss, and then he says "Smokin'," like I just love that ending.
It's so cute.
Yeah, because now Stanley, kind of got the courage to like, he took a little bit of the mask with him, that whole classic story.
He stood up for himself. He got a little bit more confidence to his boss as well. Like he stood up to his boss, he stood up to, the bad guys. There's a couple of lines. So I love when they're at the end scene when he's fighting, he's beating up, and I always remember this when he's beating up Dorian and he pauses, he goes, "I'm winning." I just always and then Dorian that always cracks me up because it's just like so real. Where if you're in your first fight and you're like, "Oh, holy shit, I'm like that's something I would do." Like, I think I'm winning. Oh my god, like it's so like
you're so right.
Yeah, I felt
it's just that like little inner brain voice like coming out loud, right? Yes, exactly.
First big fight, and then I love this line too, and I'm gonna say it from now on, but it's time to PARTY because I gotta. And I just like want to use that now for the rest of my life.
It's so perfectly corny that it works,
But it works, exactly.
I wrote that down because that's kind of the Mask's first real line in the movie.
It's his first real line, and I'm like, it's perfect. And I guarantee you that was ad-libbed because a lot of same with Ace Ventura, like a lot of lines were ad-libbed by Carrey because he tries to figure out like the character and what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's funny, what's, and I guarantee a lot, like I said, a lot of the lines were ad-libbed as The Mask, which I find impressive. So Smokin',
impressive. And now that you say that, I was watching Cameron Diaz, with him just to see sometimes because, and Courtney Cox as well in Ace Ventura, sometimes if you're looking at her, like she looks like she's about to crack. Like she turns away. Yeah. I was really noticing going back to the tutu scene in the lobby of the institution when he's like doing his instant replay. I was watching Courtney Cox and she's smiling and turning. So I was looking to see if Cameron Diaz was doing that at all. And there are moments where like she seems truly like surprised, like she's just watching him and it's like, which
kind of works because as The Mask, he is so manic and unpredictable and crazy. So it works that she would be genuinely like, what the fuck is going on? Like that's because that would be your genuine, like this guy came in with a green face and was doing Tasmanian devil tornadoes all around you and like crazy saying these lines. Yeah. You're going to be like, that fate, so I feel like it works. I bet they did that on purpose, like ad-lib as much as possible, so that everyone's look of shock and confusion is actually real because they're like, we don't know what he's going to do next. Like this guy's fucking nuts. Like, right? But that's the message.
It works. So it totally works.
Mm-hmm. It works. Yeah. That was my feeling on it when I read that it was mostly ad-lib. I'm like, that makes sense because they want those genuine like reactions. Like what?
I think it's such a fun movie. I really don't have anything wrong with it. Right? Or is there anything to pick apart? I think it's so good.
Even thinking like slower parts, like there's not, because it's a short movie, so it's trimmed and cut. Like it's not, there's not really parts that are like dragging too long.
Right.
I agree. Like it's just a really like well-made, fun movie. Like, is it an Oscar winner? No, but like it's, you know, which who cares about Oscars? But but you know,
exactly.
it's definitely like it was a really fun rewatch. So I wasn't sure. I remembered a lot of it, but even though I had the memories of it, who knows when you actually go to rewatch as an adult?
Yeah.
Like,
does it actually still work? Right?
Does it still work? Or does it stand up? And does it still maintain my interest? And it did.
I think it did, right?
Yeah.
I think it holds up very well. And like we were saying, the effects are pretty amazing. I mean,
pretty good. Like
this
I
was
said, 30 years.
This was only a year after Jurassic Park. I mean, so there were some major, you know, steps, you know, and a couple years after T2, which we've talked about, Terminator 2, right? So, yeah, like the early 90s, they were really exploring some amazing effects. And, all, you know, 30 plus years later, I think they hold up very well.
I agree.
And I just want to say two things. Going back to Dorian in The Mask, when he's, you know, in control, it's funny how, like, they basically made him look exactly like the Hulk. You know, like how he gets fit. Like the Lou Ferrigno, like, I was just like, wow, okay.
A little bit, yeah.
I see the inspiration. And then I also just have to shout out Milo one more time because the whole jail scene is so
The jail
fun.
scene is great. And I was
that
watching
dog was working.
I was watching with Shelby and I turned and I'm like, Shelby, would you do this? And then she's like literally sleeping. I'm like, bitch, she wouldn't even, she would just be like, no, you're bye mom. I'm going to go live with grandma now for a retreat.
Yeah. She'd be like, okay, well.
Milo's great. I think he's played by Max the dog. I think the dog's really
I
Max.
saw that too. But I just love when, Stanley says to when Milo's like grabbing the keys from the sleeping cop, you know, and he says, what does Stanley say? It's so cheesy, but it's so cute. Not the cheese, the keys. Because in the dog's mouth is the cheese. And he's just like,
he shows him the cheese, like cheese.
So cute. So stinking cute, really that dog.
Cute.
Like,
and I love
how
when
can
he
you
puts the
not
mask on. I love Mask Milo. That's one of my favorite scenes. I wanted more Mask Milo. Maybe that's my only complaint. I wanted more Mask Milo.
I know. They could have done a whole sequel that's just Mask Milo, you know what I mean?
Milo, like, and his like shenanigans you get into, but like the creepy blonde hair guy, he's like grabbing the guys, like, got ya.
Oh, I know.
And I remember I'm like, get the mask on. I know it's gonna happen, but I'm like, come on, Milo, get the mask on.
Well, it's also just so cute because he like does exactly what he needs to do. He like he just puts his head on it. I'm like, did they line that with like peanut butter or something? And he's just like, ooh, you know?
Yeah, my dog would be
it's
like,
so
no.
cute.
But yeah, and then like he turns and then he's like, and he turns like, oh shit, like I love that scene.
And I love how Milo pees on the guy. He's just as chaotic and
then he laughs
crazy.
Like when he pees on it, like it's like that cartoon.
I totally forgot about how Milo has this moment there, and it's so
yeah. I remembered it because I love dogs, so I was like, oh, I can't wait for Mask Milo. But it's a short scene. But yeah, that's a really fun one. I really.
And one last thing that just came to mind in that whole big finale fight, you know, and all that. When Tina, Cameron Diaz, is tied up to like the little fake like palm tree thing and like she's right by the explosives. And then remember, she's got a good idea. I'm like, okay, I wrote down, okay, very smart, Tina. She says, just one last kiss.
One last kiss, yeah.
Because she knows, you know, those looks are undeniable. So Dorian takes the mask off and he's holding it. Right? And he kisses her. And I'm like, wow, she's got great aim because she's kissing him. She's not looking at the mask in his hand. But she's got great foot aim and kicks that right into, you know, I'm like.
She should be on the team. Ray Finkel's. Maybe it was Ray Finkel. Wait a minute.
Oh my God.
Wait a minute.
You're right. Ray Finkel is Lois Einhorn, who is actually Tina.
Oh my God. We just put it together. Jim Carrey's having a rough time. He keeps coming back. He's like, well, it is what it is. This is clearly
This is my shtick.
I just made that connection. Oh,
I love that. Good connection. Wow. Yeah, you need her on your team, boys. I just was like, okay, very impressive to kick that. Yeah, I mean, I would not be able to do that. I'm kissing someone and like your hand is there. I'd be like, yeah. So movie magic.
It's fun. Movie magic. Exactly. I do love this scene. And this is a classic. And I remember this from the previews when the cops interrupt him and Tina and they're like, freeze. And he goes, ah. And then they're like, what? And he's like, you told me to freeze. Like, that's a classic scene.
Oh, classic.
Freeze! Put your hands up.
But you told me to freeze.
All right, on freeze.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember that in the previews and being like, this looks like a great movie.
And also just the way the park looks, it's lit very beautifully, and like that really stands out. Like and like his beret, very, very memorable for me.
Yeah, very like colorful and good cinematography. And I use this line to this day. And I actually forgot it was in The Mask. I thought it was in Ace Ventura, but I just knew it was Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever I'm like accused of something, I always am like, it wasn't me. It was the one-armed man. Like every time. And I still use it to this day. Like whenever I'm like being accused of something or I'm like trying to be innocent, like it wasn't me, I always use that, which is an offshoot from The Fugitive. Harrison,
oh my gosh, that's true. You're right.
Yeah, that's from The Fugitive, which is also an amazing movie. But I still use that line to this day.
You're under arrest.
No, it wasn't me. It was the one-armed man.
The interior of the garage where Stanley has his car repaired, that's the same fire station used in Ghostbusters. I
was going to say, Katie, it looks so much like it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, love it. Love it.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really fun fact.
That's so fun. And that also has a big anniversary this year. Ghostbusters turns 40.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be a good one. You got to do that one. And it took 4 hours to apply the mask. That's it. 4 hours of makeup every time for the mask, which doesn't surprise me because it's like, makeup's.
It looks really good. It looks honestly like it's his skin. It's so, they did a good job really doing that because you can see all of his features and everything. So, wow, amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
So that's like commitment.
Picture of Kellaway's wife.
What?
Uh-oh.
Margaret! You son of a bitch!
Jeez, I figured you had a sense of humor. After all.
You married her!
That's gotta hurt.
Thanks everybody for listening. Check out the next part of this marathon Jim Carrey episode.